Testing, 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 testing. All right. Get a little music going. Get this party started.
Sounds like you're having an eventful day so far.
Yeah. We're all my millennials. Raise your hand. There we go.
I would be amongst the group.
What do millennials make up like 50% of the workforce these days now? Something like that. It's pretty great.
Yeah, pretty outrageous.
Yeah. And what is like the latest generation, like the Gen Z or Y? I'm getting old here. I'm about to turn 40.
I don't know. But
after us?
Yeah, sooner or later they're gonna start using like Greek alphabets or something to start classifying.
Are they gonna get my TLC reference or what?
They should. I don't see why they wouldn't. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, like straight out of the 90s, guys. So cool. Hey, I know a bunch of you guys are joining and coming into the room. Hey, for those of you who are showing up, share with us, where you're from, what kind of people you're trying to hire, what industry you're in, what kind of company, give us some context of where you're coming from. But more importantly, put in there what a win would be for you today. So just take this time while we're waiting for everybody else to just reflect, like, why are you here? What would be like the number one thing if you could learn something today that would just probably change your world, right? So please share with us, and we'll look to address as many of those items as we can, and share with you some channels where we can address those if we don't get to them today. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. We had a lot of people signed up and a lot of people joined us last time for this, and we know it's a hot topic. Finding people is a tough thing these days. So we're going to cover a bunch of different strategies and where and how and to attract and find better quality as well as higher volumes of candidates. So this is going to be an interesting topic, I think, for most of us.
Yeah.
All right.
Pittsburgh, Texas. Where at in Texas are you guys from? That's where I'm originally from. San Antonio. I was College Station, but I was raised in Houston. We used to go over to San Antonio when we wanted to go hang out, have a good time. Austin was a little too packed, so San Antonio was the spot.
I like that. Oakland, 64% of the workforce in Oakland is millennials workforce, and plus that gal on Jeopardy who's from Oakland. We watch that every night, so she's on day like 40 winning. Awesome. See a lot of my friends from AutoClore here. Thanks for joining us, guys. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, well, we'll get going here. Let me share my screen. All right, so, and see if I can figure out all the tech. Everybody can see my screen okay? Yeah?
Yes, I can.
All right, good, awesome. Well, obviously for hiring in 2022, we're facing all sorts of unique challenges. I don't think, trying to avoid scrubs is a unique challenge to 2022. That's something we're always trying to do a better job of avoiding, but I thought it was timely here. So just quick introduction, to myself and what we'll be covering today. So I've literally spent my entire life thinking about talent assessment and talent acquisition. I was in leadership roles in high school and in college, and it was, my father was a management consultant, and so he taught people all different types of strategies for managing and growing teams. But I just really resonated with the idea that if you can get the right people on the bus, that success will naturally follow. And I just spent my whole life thinking about this stuff and practicing it. And part of that journey for me is I've done over 10,000 interviews. I was very curious. I'm a Malcolm Gladwell follower, and this is something that's important to me. So I wanted to get that under my belt. And there's lots of great insights I can share with us. And once we get to some other topics, we'll save that for another time. We're published in the scientific journal Personnel and Selection. I published my father's book, Hiring Talented Team Players, helped get that out there into the public. And we've developed a fact-based performance hiring system that we share with our clients, and they're using this technique to not only increase the volume and quality of candidates that they're getting into their pools, but how they're assessing and evaluating them and onboarding them as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. That'll be some of the part of the topic here. But prior to COVID, I was a regular speaker for SHRM and sharing on various different topics, particularly this compensation topic we'll talk about today in various entrepreneur groups. We have dozens and dozens of citations across Monster, ERE.net, Forbes, you name it, all major kind of online publications where our content has been cited. So really leaned into just trying to provide as much thought leadership for our talent acquisition community as possible. So some of our clients in our recruitment consulting engagements, we've been able to make impacts where we've seen 5 to 50x in the volume of candidates. So just depending on the situation there, we've been able to see dramatic increases in the volume and subsequently the quality. We've had clients who we're going from 100% turnover down to 20 or 30% turnover, especially in semi frontline type of roles, customer service sales types roles. We've seen turnover reduced greatly there, and we've seen individual teams within large organizations reach number one there, all using the fact-based hiring system that we are sharing with you today. Subsequently, we have over 170 reviews across Trustpilot and Capterra. Feel free to read those, and everybody's getting unique takeaways from that stuff. So some of the content we're sharing. But ultimately, here in 2022, we are continuing the trend of this great resignation that we've heard, and I'll just play a little song there. Yeah, So that's what's happening, right? Day after day, we're hearing that employers are hearing that same tune and theme from their workers. And I think this chart was really interesting. You see during the last few recessions and the major, there was a small one there in the early 2000s, and then obviously a big one in 07 to 09. And then COVID was kind of out of control, weird thing. We saw over 50 million people lose their jobs. So people weren't quitting, that's for sure. But we've seen the highest quit rate we've seen in really the last 50, 70 years, really. And so it's really an interesting scenario here. And so why is that, right? Well, ultimately, many of us were able to take that step back in the last couple of years and spend more time doing things that we really enjoy, spend more time with our family, working from home, having more flexibility ultimately to live our lives and work at the same time. And so we're beginning to question what we're doing at work and what that environment and situation is like. And Mr. Wonderful here, I thought really helps punctuate that point here. And let me see. Oh, you guys aren't able to hear my sound. So, all right, hang on. I think you should be able to now.
And I understand that you can't get a lot of people to come back to the office. That you thought it would be like 15% who wouldn't come back after the pandemic, but it's really something like 55% who say they will never come back?
They're never coming back.
Well, doesn't that tell you something about how much they must have fucking hated the office to begin with? I'm just asking. I mean, I miss my office.
Look,
I want to be at the office.
They have proven to everybody all around the world that they can use technology to do their jobs successfully, creatively, functionally, productively. They want to stay at home, raise their kids, take care of their elderly parents. And in fact, if you say to them, you have to come back to the office, that's our new mandate, they'll say, nah, I'm just going to quit and work somewhere else. So we thought it was 15%. We have a sample size of about 10,000 people in our supply chain plus our companies. I thought it would be in accounting, logistics, compliance departments, the people who used to work in cubicles. It's everybody. They don't want to come back. And so we have to learn to live this way, and I'm okay with it. It works. I find it really interesting.
So you're okay with it?
Okay. One of the guys that's crucial to our whole operating company accounting said to me, I grew up on a farm. I'm going back to the farm. I'm going to live on the farm. I'll work for you, but it's going to be from the farm. I said, cool. I'm okay with it. No problem.
Who wants to live on a farm?
Okay, I think that really paints the picture of what we're facing today. And, I know some of you guys have frontline workers who are out there in the field every day or in four walls inside a restaurant or a retail establishment or a manufacturing facility. Look, flexibility is something that is available to all workers and can be accommodated. So even though we have folks in our workforce, because I know some of you are thinking this like, hey, well, they've got to come in, they've got to be in the office, or they've got to come to the shop, they got to be there working on the machines. There are creative ways to provide flexibility for your workforce, and this is a theme that's just not gonna stop. People have gotten this taste, and many employers are already accommodating these things. So the competitive advantage to those who are creating the environment of flexibility, work-life balance, allowing people to work from their farms or whatever it may be for them, they're going to win that battle in talent. So, for the rest of us, we're going to have to get creative in how we create this more flexible, engaging, lifestyle-oriented work arrangements, right? And they can be done. So these are some of the stats, right? We're seeing some huge numbers. So I think these last two stats are things that I really want to point out, because this is, again, an area where we can get more creative. We can be more inviting to these workers. So, 50% of the adults 55 and older, so boomers, are leaving the workforce. So these are some of your most experienced, talented, capable workers, and they're just flat out leaving, right? And even more disturbing are the number of females that are leaving the workforce. Just in September alone, you see over 300,000, and I'd love to get some better numbers on this from the totality of this situation, because also, sorry to all the men out there, the females out there are the smartest and best workers in the workforce typically. Us guys are getting C's and D's in our report cards. These women are getting A pluses across the board, and they're often also some of the most highly educated workers, and they're leaving the workforce in droves. So if we can tap into this workforce and bring these people back, this is a huge opportunity. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but ultimately it's going to be addressing some of these, some of the 3 C's that we're going to talk about here in a sec. So I like to think of this current climate really as our biggest opportunity to level up the quality of talent that we have on our teams, as opposed to it being a big challenge, right? If we can address these 4 issues here, right? The fact that, we've got kids in and out of school, we got aging parents. Somebody brought that was a topic that was brought up here. Both of those are realities for us as millennial workers, which are 50 to 65% of the workforce in many cases, right? If we can address the skill gap by training, onboarding, developing those skills in our workers, and then ultimately cost of living and inflation is through the roof. So we've got to be able to address the compensation factor, and the flexibility and getting creative around that is going to be all ways to help us achieve our goals here. At the end of the day, this is Gallup did a survey on this. It's a multi-trillion-dollar problem, turnover is, in American businesses. And it's not because of the cost of posting ads and spending time doing interviews and recruiting people, or even the cost of like training and onboarding. It's the opportunity cost that's missed. So when we have unfilled positions, we're losing the opportunity to capture revenue either through uncaptured sales or uncaptured delivery of our products and services, which ultimately turn into revenue for our companies. In some cases, it's even worse, right? We're having turnover, and we're having unable to meet our current customers' needs, and that's causing us to lose customers. So we're losing previously reliable revenue, and so that can be in the tens to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in lost revenue. So it's a really serious problem. If you're on this call and you're a business leader, owner, executive, or if you're in HR or recruiting, it's really important to make sure that you're getting your entire team, your executive team, your recruitment team, your frontline managers, and begin to have this discussion with them about the real cost of turnover or inability to fill roles. So you understand how important this issue is to your business. It's not just the heartache of like, oh, we all have to work overtime, or we're stressed out, or max capacity. I mean, this real dollars and cents effect on our businesses here, right? So James is going to throw in the chat here our cost of hiring, or our opportunity cost analysis guide. So I think this is really helpful because, again, a lot of times when I ask people like, hey, what does it cost you to hire somebody? They start counting up the cost of ads and the uniforms and the computers and training, and they come up with a few $1,000s. But in reality is, I mean, it's anywhere from $50,000 to $1 million. I mean, you take a salesperson with $1 million quota and they don't meet it, you just lost out on $1 million opportunity, right? So the numbers are huge. So what is the solution? Well, you got to have a hiring system. Ultimately, you got to have a process. Like any good process, you can begin to refine and modify and tweak and adjust that process so that you can get the most out of it and begin to measure those results. So today we're really going to focus on the framework, the 3 C's, and some strategies for attracting the best talent and increasing both the size and the volume of your talent pool. But once we've dealt with these issues, right, and we've created a powerful and meaningful pool of talent, then we need to get good and better at evaluating those talent pools through structured interview processes, assessments, and other mechanisms that you can find in great software, hiring platforms, hiring tools. Some that we offer, some that you're probably using already, and then training and onboarding. So we won't get into those too much today. But if you're interested in talking about those subjects, you can definitely schedule a one-on-one with us here later. But ultimately, everything starts, when we're talking about the framework, starts with addressing the 3 C's. So compensation, career growth, and culture. These are the 3 things, the 3 levers that we have to communicate our employer value proposition to our ideal candidate, right? And they're not always necessarily a third, and a third. They could be, but each one of these topics could be 40%, 50% of the reason why somebody makes a decision to work for you. Compensation by far is the biggest driver. No matter how much time we spend talking about career growth and culture, these are things that we must have. But if we're not addressing compensation, you're going to constantly run into a challenge. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that just to highlight the inflationary effect that's happening in wages. So in many, especially frontline, low-level, low-skilled workers, we're seeing wage increases of 20% or higher. You're facing a 12, 13% inflation rate. So just there alone, as employers, we're going to have to catch up to just dealing with inflation, let alone this hyper wage inflation we're seeing on the frontline workers. I mentioned before, I'd speak at SHRM conferences. I spoke for an hour specifically on the wage pressures that were occurring prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic had this weird effect due to all, the government stimulus or whatever, all these different reasons, but has really created hyperinflation. I was talking to a guy who owns a small credit union in Helena, Montana, so kind of a small rural community, I guess, and he's offering entry-level white-collar jobs, and he's competing with fast food jobs that are paying more. The wages for some fast food jobs in some markets are reaching $18 an hour. It's crazy. That's almost $40,000 a year annually in income. So it's a real issue. We got to get out in front of it. So both smaller and larger employers, this can be a major challenge, right? We can't just snap our fingers and raise our wages overnight. We need to have a strategy in place so that we can, not put our business, bankrupt our businesses in the process. But this is a real topic that we need to address. And then a few other things, again, and when it comes to compensation that are in that topic, but people need healthcare. That's the bottom line. We're humans. We get sick. We get hurt. We need help. And what we saw here and what we're seeing right through the pandemic is this flexibility and paid time off, right? Making sure that our workers are using it, taking it, right? So the levers that we can begin to tweak tomorrow immediately is, instead of using job descriptions to market our opportunities, we can start writing job advertisements. Think about how we're marketing our jobs more as a marketing piece instead of this boring, stale job description that is not interesting to anybody. And this can take lots of iteration. You can leverage your marketing team. You can leverage consultants like us to help begin going through that process. But ideally, we want to deliver a message that will resonate with our ideal candidate. So it starts with understanding, who is our ideal candidate? Is it a stay-at-home mom? Is it a recent baby boomer who's deciding on whether it's retiring or not? Or is it a recent college grad, right? Each of these people are going to have something else in their world that they're looking for. And we want to be able to tell a story about how our career growth opportunities and our culture are going to help foster what's important to those people. And so some basic things you can do is just get clear about sharing your company mission, get clear, tell stories about the opportunity to grow their career. I mean, there's a young man on this call who I saw go from a route driver to a branch manager. So Travis, this is the kind of story that you could be sharing with your future hires, right? And talk about that journey that you went through. And we could be sharing that through lots of different mediums, social, video, just case studies that you can be sharing with your potential new hires. We want to paint a picture, clear picture, the day in the life of somebody doing this job, and how, more importantly, how that affects others, your customers, most importantly. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y, there's this sense that we want to be doing something meaningful in our work. So we need to do a better job of communicating that. I don't know, anybody seen that FedEx commercial? It's relatively new, but they're talking about like, we're helping Grammy winners, we're helping, frontline workers, we're helping all these different people. And at the end of the commercial, they're like, I'm a FedEx worker, right? I'm the person that's delivering these things that these people need in order to have these accomplishments, right? Lastly, we want to vividly explain what our company culture is and how someone with our aligned values will be able to fit in and be embraced in that culture. So somebody who shares these same values as our organization, if we can communicate that effectively, that light bulb's going to go on for them and they're going to say, hey, I want to be a part of that, right? And so maybe we can move the needle to sharing how career growth and our company culture is 80 to 90% of the reason why somebody should want to work here. And for those of us who are struggling to be competitive or who are simply just average in our compensation, right? This is always a pet peeve of mine. Average is not competitive, in my opinion. You think about that. If you're in the middle, there's 50% of the people that are above you there. But if we can shrink that gap and we can tell that story and we can give people more value in working for our organizations aside from compensation, we can make a real difference in how we attract people and retain them ultimately, right? So we'll drop in the chat or you can ask for our ebook on how to transform your boring, stale job descriptions into a true marketing message that you can share across multiple channels there. So, okay, here maybe are some of the meat and potatoes. Here are the more tactile things that you can begin doing ultimately tomorrow, many of them. And so there's really kind of 5 major channels. So there's 4 really clearly defined ones. So job boards, employee referrals, obviously staffing, recruiting companies, and being your own headhunter are really 4 channels that you need to be exploring and using probably in most cases. And then the 5th one is kind of really all our miscellaneous stuff. And I'll share some interesting creative ideas there for you. But for many of us, if you're hiring, job boards are probably useful for most jobs other than ones that require very, very, very specialized skill sets. So, if you're going to hire an attorney or a CPA or rocket scientists, job boards aren't going to do you any good. But, hiring frontline workers, hiring people for potential, job boards are really, probably a must use in your recipe for success. But so there are 2 job boards that are going to universally, be helpful for you, but you've got to use Indeed and you've got to use ZipRecruiter. Here, there are a handful of others that are worth investigating, and they're more situationally appropriate. LinkedIn, Dice, Monster, Craigslist, Handshake's great for college recruiting. So, and there are tons of others that are worth experimenting with depending on your situation. Ultimately, with Indeed and ZipRecruiter, don't be cheap. You've got to invest in the sponsored ads. Indeed, I used to tell people it was like $300 to $350 a month. That has gone up to about $500 per month, guys. The competition is that fierce. So you roughly want to put a $500 monthly budget towards Indeed sponsored ads. And then with ZipRecruiter is super complicated, but I only recommend buying their premium job slots. If you're a larger organization, they may have some extra bells and whistles are worth exploring, but in smaller organizations, the premium job slots produce the best results. It's roughly, if you get 10 candidates on Indeed, you might get 3 on ZipRecruiter. You might say, well, Indeed's giving me 10 and they're giving me 3. Why would I invest in ZipRecruiter? Well, that's a 30% increase right there immediately in the volume of candidates that you're getting. And if you've done a good job of sharing your career growth, your culture, then not only are you getting more candidates, but you're going to be getting higher quality of candidates as well, because they're going to be resonating there with you. A couple of tidbits on tips that you can just adjust immediately is don't get fancy with your job titles. You can call people whatever you want when you hire them. Can you guys see this? I just brought Indeed over.
Yes, we're able to see it.
Okay, cool. So I just brought this up. I did a quick search for jobs. I live near Seal Beach here. And, some examples of titles that I love and I hate. Like, I hate this team member title, right? Like, who goes to Indeed and types in team member when they're searching for a job, right? So it ain't going to come up, right? Front of house. I'm assuming this is a restaurant. Like, why not call it a server or a customer service, person or something like that? So this one's good, actually. So it's clever. Private jet flight attendant. So the key word is flight attendant, and the selling point is that you get to do that on a private jet, I guess. It's kind of cool. Tutors, yeah, okay, maybe there's location, so sort of good. You got all positions. Like, what does that mean? There was a good one. Crew, right? Crew member. Again, I would avoid that. I would be using something more generic, right? Restaurant server, warehouse worker. There was a good sales associate. And customer service. So these are going to be much more search-friendly types of titles that you can use, and that could, for some of us who have really complex, like, I don't know, water main technician or something like that, or water main tech. I mean, simplify that to technician or something like that, right? So the other thing I really try to avoid here is screener questions. I only use those if they're absolutely necessary. So in this day and age, when people are searching for jobs, they're going to a place like Indeed, and they are doing quick apply, quick apply, quick apply, quick apply. If you're on your, the mobile device and you've got to leave the job board and go to a company career site, which is often not optimized for mobile. So if you are going to move people to your career sites from a job and your career site's not optimized for mobile, like, you lost that person. They're not coming back. They didn't, dog tag or earmark your job to come back to spend 30 minutes filling out your application in order to maybe get a job for, $18 an hour, right? They're not doing this stuff, right? And if you're talking about professional level people, if I'm a, 100, 150, 200K, worker, I'm not spending 30 minutes of my valuable time filling out a long application, right? I'm going apply, and letting the recruiters begin to reach out to me, right? So I want to take down all the barriers to allow somebody to deliver their resume to me, and that is going to greatly increase the volume and quantity of candidates that you're getting. So some of you in larger organizations are like, well, I have to get the application. Well, that is maybe true, but you do not have to. You're not legally obligated to get that application at the time of receiving the resume. You can begin to ask for that resume later in the process. It's perfectly acceptable. The key is just treating everybody the same way. So these are some real, easy tips that literally you can go in and adjust your settings on your job boards tomorrow, and you could see an impact and an increase in the quantity and quality of candidates you're getting. Okay, so we talked about job boards, a little bit boring there. Really, employee referrals are by far the best source of A-player talent. 71% of people who are hired from an employee referral are rated as high-performing hires. So it's a little bit of a trickier strategy to implement and execute, but it can also start tomorrow simply by beginning to make it part of your culture and talking about it on a regular basis. So it is not HR's responsibility to run the employee referral program. It is not the frontline manager's responsibility to run the employee referral program. It is everybody's responsibility to own employee referrals. This is somebody at every level of the organization, including your employees. It's all of our jobs to be making this part of our culture, talking about it on a regular basis, and driving referrals from our friends and family and acquaintances to come work for our organizations, right? So we want to do a few things. We want to make it easier for people to do. So I go, hey, James, you know any great web developers? could you send them my way? That's great. Maybe he takes the time to craft an email to send out all his old web developer friends. But most likely he's too busy to do that. So why don't I tee that up for him? I can share with him social posts that all he has to do is share. I can give him the content and the link to where to apply to the job. I can deliver that in his inbox, and all he has to do is just send to everybody in his Rolodex, right? So I teed it up for him. So one last thing here, aside from just talking it up, the biggest point I want to make here, and the biggest mistake I feel like I see people do when they have an employee referral program, is they incentivize the hire. So they say, hey, if you refer an employee and we hire them and they stay for 6 months, we're going to give you a $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 bonus or whatever, right? Well, that's great. I would love that bonus, but that disincentivizes me as a worker to actually make that referral. It's like, well, I got to kind of figure out like who's good and like who's not. And like, I don't know, like maybe they're not, I don't know. It's a waste of my time. It's too confusing. And, like I don't want to get involved in this. So we want to incentivize the activity, not the outcome. You could do both if you want, but incentivize the activity. So I'm going to give a gold star to the person who refers 20 of their friends, even if none of them get the job. Shoot, I'm going to give that person $1,000. I'm going to give them an iPad. I'm going to throw them a pizza party for their department, right? And so there's lots of creative ways to create excitement, buzz, competition, friendly competition in your organizations to help make employee referrals part of that. And we'll drop our ebook. There's a full guide on like 37 things that you can do to really build and enhance your employee referral program. We're going to drop that in the chat as well for you to check out. And then lastly, you got to have a hiring software platform to help you easily track and manage those employee referrals so that you can give credit where credit is deserved, right? So here's my, favorite technique, especially if, again, we're talking about highly skilled or professional level roles, is be your own headhunter. It is not that difficult. Literally, do this tomorrow. So if anybody has not done their own headhunting activity, for $79.99, you can get a Recruiter Lite or a Sales Navigator seat on LinkedIn. It's a drop in the bucket compared to not having these roles filled. And you can run a search, and there's like tutorials up the yin yang in LinkedIn if you don't know how to do this. You can run a search for whatever you're looking for, whoever you're looking for, wherever you're looking for them. And a list of people will come up, and you can make a personalized outreach to them, and you can reach out to 10 or 50 people. And you could do this in like 30 minutes. So 30 minutes a day, you cherry pick 10 people, deliver a really personalized message like say, hey, James, I saw that you were doing growth marketing. I think that was super, super interesting. We're in a growth phase. I thought that this role here might be interesting, with us as a hire talent. Would you be interested in having a cup of coffee with me? And I'd love to learn more about your career and what you've been able to do there, right? So personalized message, right, that is coming from me, the boss. So it's great as bosses. Definitely, you want to, if you're, desperate for talent, make this part of your daily habit. When you're drinking your cup of coffee, spend 30 minutes on LinkedIn and do some personalized outreach. Don't leave it to third-party recruiters or internal recruiters solely. Obviously, we want to leverage our internal and external partners as best we can, but this is something we can do ourselves. So LinkedIn's great for like kind of professional level and even to kind of mid-level in specialized roles. I mean, LinkedIn's kind of a catch-all place to go. But other great databases are Indeed. Indeed's resume database is fantastic. ZipRecruiter's like whatever, but you might find some folks in there. And often if you're using their sponsored ads, I think it comes for free or low cost. And then ultimately you can get in some advanced sourcing techniques. So we worked with a professional services firm. And one of the things we did with them last year is we databased literally every single person in their talent pool across all their competitors, across all the regions that they were working in. We literally were able to create a 100% complete list of every person, every available person in the market. and what their role was in their current companies, and got their contact information, not just their LinkedIn, but their personal cell phone numbers, personal email addresses, so that we could begin more advanced cold outreach and marketing strategies to a very niche select group of people. So to do that, you can do it yourself. You can leverage VAs, state licensing boards, databases of specialized talent. So there are some of those out there that you can leverage, and you've ultimately, in order to execute most of these things and to do them pain-free, you got to have a great hiring software to help manage outreach and manage measuring metrics and things like that. So for those of you who don't already have an in-house recruiter, and you're at 50 employees, you need to add 20 more. I mean, hiring an in-house recruiter is definitely a lot more cost-effective, having a sole person responsible for doing this stuff, than having to outsource it to third-party recruiters, right? So obviously, in some cases, third-party recruiters are going to be necessary. I don't want to completely write them off. I own a recruiting firm as well on top of this, but be industry specific. I am partial to boutique firms. Building a relationship with these firms is really, really important, because look, who are they going to prioritize? Your job order, or the one where they have a really strong relationship and understanding of the company and the company culture and the career growth, and there's a partnership between them and the executive team, right? Like, those are going to be the companies that get the most attention. The rest of those job orders are going to fall on the back burner for these firms, right? This day and age, direct placement firms are, really for the last 5 years are going to be the way to go. And I'm in a forum of 20 other search firms, and many of them do staffing and temp to perm and contract and stuff, but they have seen a huge push for direct placement, right? Players want security, not question marks, right? So, and again, temp to perm definitely has its place, and there is opportunities there. So I'm not completely bashing it, but in many cases, direct placements can be better. And then vet your search firms like you would a new hire. Like, you're going to invest time and energy with these people, and a lot of money if they're making placements with them. So you want to vet them to make sure that they're going to be a good partner and use of your time. So one thing I would avoid is don't hire 7 recruiting firms to do in one market to help you fill one job. They're all going to just find the same people. Why don't you just find a really good one who's going to be effective at delivering those candidates, right? Okay, so getting creative, I want to cover this briefly. I mean, we could spend probably 2 hours talking about each of these techniques, but here are 2 techniques, the top 2, literally you could use tomorrow. So number 1 is, you already have an applicant tracking system or a hiring platform, leverage your existing data. You can simply go through and find all your 4- and 5-star candidates that didn't make it through your process, or maybe never engaged in your process, and begin marketing to them. You could send them emails and text messages and send them voicemails or cold call campaigns to get these people engaged. And the list is there. I mean, these are people that you've been hopefully collecting for years and years and years. If you're not using a hiring platform, this is just one reason why. Hiring platforms are dirt cheap. You can find them for a very, very low cost out there these days. And you just got to have it. You're building a pool of talent that you can continue to re-engage over and over again. In many cases, you can actually also leverage your existing customers. We were working with a utility in Hawaii, and they're having a hell of a time finding people, right? And they've got 100,000 customers in any given area. So just part of their monthly newsletter to their customers, you can add in there, hey, we're looking for great people. If you love our service and want to come work and deliver clean water to your community, click here to view our open jobs, right? I mean, so it's integrating this into your general marketing is a really easy, low-hanging fruit way to get your message in front of people who are already hopefully raving fans of your product or service, right? So these can be your best employees, people who love your product and service, and they're looking for a job and they're talented. They're going to come work for you, and they're going to do it enthusiastically. They're already bought into your culture to some degree, right? You can do the same thing with leveraging vendors. Again, some of these are very specific to different types of jobs. So like colleges and vocational schools, building those relationships. And again, they're relationships. It's not, I called the vocational school one time and asked them if they had any recent technician grads, right? It's calling them every month. It's stopping by, bringing them donuts. It's getting to know the recruiters there and making sure that you're on top of their mind, right? Mastermind groups are great for highly specialized workers. So, professional services, lighting industry is one area we spend a lot of time in. Creating a mastermind of sales professionals in the lighting industry so that they could share best practices and network with each other. And now, guess what? If you're moderating that group, you can figure out who are the top performers there and build that relationship with them. And then one day say, hey, James, you've been crushing it out there and you and I are buddies. Would you consider taking a look at working for us? And James is going to entertain that conversation, more often than not, right? So cold calling, that's definitely going to be a more advanced strategy. I am not a fan of social media, but in a lot of frontline workers, Facebook, blue collar, entry-level jobs, Facebook can be a great place to market your opportunities. So, well, guys, we covered a lot and we have a little bit more time. So we're going to get to Q&A in a sec, but I'd love for you guys, any takeaways or wins that you had, please share those in the chat. We appreciate that feedback. So please share at least one takeaway or one win that you got from this presentation so that we know that resonated with you and that we can continue to share that with future audiences. Also, in the Q&A section or in the chat, drop some questions, some things that unanswered or challenges. Maybe you've tried some of these techniques and you've run into a brick wall. And that brings us to our offer today. I mean, we would like to speak with you one-on-one. We understand that many of you are coming from different industries, backgrounds, different company sizes, or trying to hire different types of workers. And there is not a necessary one-size-fits-all solution to your talent acquisition efforts. So would love to speak with you. James is going to drop a link to book a call with us. We're going to do a free discovery call. And in that call, what we'll do is we'll evaluate your current recruitment marketing processes, what's working and where you're running into brick walls or having challenges. And then we're going to create a custom strategy along with some techniques for your specific situation so that you can begin to use those right away. And that leads to our recruitment marketing and consulting packages, which we'll share with you what an engagement would look like. So we customize these for our clients because, again, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. We're going to take all of the tools in our tool belt. We're going to map out which ones are going to have the highest potential for success. And if you feel like, hey, it would be helpful to have a coach and a team behind you, then we would be happy to talk to you about what those consulting packages look like and what a custom one for your organization might entail there. So, feel free to book a call with me or someone on my team here. James is going to drop that in the chat. And what kind of questions are you seeing coming up there in the chat or in the Q&A section there, James?
Awesome. So we've actually had several questions come through. I know Gabriella had one. She goes, "Hi Fletcher, what advice do you have for managers who are still in search of the perfect candidate in this market?"
Yeah. Well, I need more context, but for managers, I mean, so we talked about this a little bit, be your own headhunter, right? So first of all, if I'm in that organization, pay the $80 a month to give my manager, a sales navigator, a LinkedIn recruiter light and enable them to do the outreach. Because first of all, that's really impactful. Like if I'm the boss and I reach out to, James, the technician, and I say, "Hey, James, I noticed that you're working at, X, Y, and Z company. It seems like you're having a great career there. I have a team full of people just like you. And I think you might be a really great fit for our team and our culture. Would you be interested in having a short call with me or having a cup of coffee? I'd love to take you out to breakfast. Let's have that conversation." Right. And again, it's something I can do every day myself, day in and day out. Right. help, tell those stories, if you've had a successful career within your organization. Again, I was talking to a gal, she had like 12 years with the same company. And she drank their Kool-Aid, man. Like, she's like, this is the best place ever. I don't understand why anybody doesn't want to come work here, right? So as a hiring manager, which, I mean, makes sense. She's been there 12 years. She loves it. She loves the culture. She likes the people she works with. I mean, she's had career growth and advancement, right? She's able to tell that story. And you could do that super easy in like 2 minutes. You take your cell phone and you turn it around and you just tell your story. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be edited. You don't have to have any special effects. You can ramble and ah if you want, or you could do 2 takes. I mean, like, do it dirty and just share it with the world, man, because that authenticity and what you're sharing can go a really, really long way in helping people understand that, hey, this is not just like some boring place to work, but there is like, a culture and an environment of growth and place that people like working at. And I'm hearing it firsthand from somebody who's experienced it, right?
Gotcha. So we have one from John. It says, what is the right percentage of referrals to total hires for this to be a part of the culture for retention, glue, stickiness, etc.?
Yeah, well, it's always going to depend on the type of worker you're dealing with. Again, the more professional level and kind of, professional level, specialized worker, right? You're going to have less referrals to a hire. You're probably talking like, 3 to 1 is probably a pretty good target you'd want to get to. And for more entry level or non-specialized or roles where you can train and develop people, you might be more of like a 10 to 1, because you're probably really assessing potential and culture fit more. And so you tend to lose more people in that process, but that's probably a pretty good rule of thumb. But ultimately it's do it, get your own metrics, start to measure and track. And you say, okay, I'm at 15 to 1 currently. So I get 15 referrals, I make 1 hire, and that hire then is rated favorably by their supervisor. So we know that was a successful hire now. And so how do we get that down to a 10 to 1 ratio, right? But the volume, to me, it's the more the better. And I'd rather, have 30 candidates and make 1 hire as opposed to having 2 candidates and making 0 hires, right? So that's why I always put the emphasis on the activity of referring. So please send me your friends and family and call, or, past acquaintances, James, and I don't really put any parameters on that, right? Anybody you think might be a great fit for this role, let's talk to them.
Got it. So Rudy says that there are some great college graduates and students that have expertise but no experience. Mm-hmm. How can we push hiring teams to take a chance on potential rather than experience? Yeah.
So having clearly defined culture and career growth opportunities. A lot of times, our job descriptions are peppered with experience requirements, specific skills. I'd really take the time to analyze the job and understand what the most important qualities or skills are. And you might start with a list of like 50 things, but ultimately, I think you'll find there's usually only a handful of skills and experiences that are really, really important. And a lot of times that falls into the quality type of nature. Like, we're looking for people who are going to be good teammates. We're going to look for people who are smart, who are fast learners, who are adaptive, right? None of those are skills that are necessarily acquired through getting some sort of certification or degree. I mean, those are qualities that are intrinsic to the person. And so using structured interview techniques as well as assessments can be really great ways to uncover hidden talent, right? Because assessments can tell us about people's personalities, their attitude and integrity, whether they're going to be a good team player. They can talk to us about their aptitude. So they don't have necessarily specific work-related skills. So we're looking for general aptitude that is likely to predict their ability to obtain and to maximize those skills that we need. And again, that structured interview process, and that usually is coupled with a candidate scorecard. So those are all things that we've built right into our hiring platform as well. So, I think it's really, really important because I'd say many of our clients, as many of them that are hiring for specialized skill sets, a lot of them are hiring for potential as opposed to for exact match experience or skills, right?
So we have another question. It says, it seems like this is for large companies with big budgets. What kinds of companies are these types of programs for?
Yeah, I mean, hiring platforms, I mean, can be as little as like $150 a month. I mean, it's really, I mean, if you can't afford that, I mean, then you shouldn't be buying Starbucks every day, basically, right? I mean, they start as low as that, and I mean, even for larger companies, I mean, being like the $10,000 a year range, but I mean, that's a pretty small number compared to the volume of candidates that they're processing, right? And I mean, that's across the board. I mean, there's hiring platforms and applicant tracking systems. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Ours are very performance hiring focused. So, driving high volumes of candidates and processing high volumes of candidates to find that hidden gems. That's typically, our approach in those areas. And then we're leveraging those specialized techniques through the consulting programs, enabling people to be their own headhunter, ultimately teaching them how to do that and equipping them with various other tools. And actually, again, those tools aren't terribly expensive. I mean, again, we database a professional service company, an engineering firm in Southern California, and we came up with like 5,000 people. So we database the entire workforce in Southern California for less than $10,000, and that data is good forever, I mean, you can do that. It's a lot easier to maintain once you've done it too, right? So you create the database, you nurture that database, and it's a hell of a lot. I mean, that's probably at least a third the cost of a recruiter fee, right? If you're going to hire a professional, you're going to be paying $25,000 to $35,000 or more, to a recruiter, and you can build that database that's yours forever to nurture for, probably well under 10 grand, in many cases.
Got it. Lawrence said that his big takeaway, definitely making the job postings and advertisements also having simple job titles. I'm assuming he was referring to the searchability, the ease of use, things like that. Another huge takeaway.
I want to make a point on that. Take a look, like just after this webinar, go read your job ad or description, whatever it is that you're posting on your career site or on Indeed. I want you to read that. And then I want you to think to yourself, do I want to work at this place after reading that? And if your answer is like, then might want to take a different approach in how you describe the opportunity to your ideal candidate, right?
Yeah. So what are some things that these individuals can book a call? Because we have a few bookings that came in. And so what are some things that people can anticipate you and your team to actually go and evaluate when during this discovery call?
Yeah. Well, I got a list of like 47 different questions that we'll ask you, but no, we'll pare that down to what's probably most appropriate for your particular kind of company and type of worker that you're looking for. And then we're going to look at like, okay, what are you currently doing? And ideally, if you have your executive team, your frontline managers, anybody who's involved in the hiring process really should be part of that call, ideally, because everybody in that group is involved in this hiring process, right? I mean, it's not just HR or it's not just the recruiting department's job to solve this problem. I mean, as executives and as frontline managers, we play huge roles in making our recruiting efforts successful. So we want to try to have as many people involved, but we're going to look at where are you currently marketing? What kind of results are you currently getting? We want to set some goals. So, okay, here's where we're at now. Here's where we want to be. So we'll look at that goal setting exercise, and then we'll lay out some of the top strategies and some techniques related to each of those strategies. If job ads is maybe a great opportunity to leverage or get more out of your ads, and we'll talk about that, and we'll lay out a few different techniques that you can use. And then we'll discuss what a custom consulting program might look for you. Again, if that's not for you, it's out of your budget, whatever, no problem. That's totally fine. You will not hurt our feelings. Literally, as I mentioned in the beginning, since I was 16 years old, my life's passion has been helping people build amazing teams of talent. Like that's all I think about day in and day out. You know, I'm happy to sit here and talk about this for hours and hours and hours. You know, if you want to take me to Mastros too, we could sit there for 4 hours and talk about it all day too.
So could you flip over to the final slide that has the SHRM codes? I've had a few people ask. Yep. So there's your SHRM codes, HRCI codes. If you guys missed out, we are going to be sending an email that breaks everything down for you guys. So it'll have the slide deck, the presentation, and some of the assets that were discussed a little bit earlier today, as well as the discovery call link, because I believe that there's a lot to unpack, and everybody has different uses for things these days, and especially whenever it comes to the hiring aspect of everything. Like your entire sequence there could be something wrong with something minuscule in a sequence, and it completely like mess up the talent pool.
In like some companies, like manufacturing companies are a great example of this, right? You have your kind of professional level workforce, and then you have your, you know, frontline workers, and you may actually need two different strategies, right, to fill those needs. So, you know, depending on the type of worker, the market that you're in. I mean, if you're in Helena, Montana, you're now competing against the Burger King across the street. So you're going to have, you know, every situation, every market, every type of company, every type of worker that you're looking for is going to need a slightly different, you know, mix of tools and strategies in place, right? So.
Cool. Awesome. Any other questions as we go to wrap this up? We'll be wrapping up here in about 2 minutes. So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat at this time. So I do know that in the pre-screening we did have one other question, but I believe you kind of answered it by answering somebody else's. So I do like how some of the questions are kind of overlapping. It just goes to show the magnitude of the issues that's having. Everybody else is having the same, some of the same problems and experiencing the same things. So I guess the biggest question I have for you guys is, did you guys get your win for the day? Lawrence dropped his in. There's been a few other people that have said that they've got some pretty solid wins out of this. What about you? Do you have any other wins that you would like to share, or did we answer something, or did we not answer something that you would like us to kind of go in over these next 2 minutes or so? Like the TLC. I bet you were jamming out, brushing your teeth to this point, like getting ready for everything.
Yeah, I don't know how this is not on the top 10 list of like work-related songs, right? That we Googled.
Okay. All right, so one person says, too much going on, too busy to implement any new processes. How do you expect someone like me to implement this?
No, you got to get your executive team on board, and have them schedule a discovery call with us. And I find that a lot of times, on HR people, they're tasked with these jobs and they're too busy with compliance, other issues, just trying to put fires out here. And the biggest challenge that they have is getting their executive team on board with making the investment required to improve their recruiting and hiring efforts, right? So, I mean, that might be just dollars and resources going to paid ads. It could be as simple as that, or it's installing a hiring platform just to make it more manageable. And one of the big things that, we do, as much as we're a software company, we are an education company, and we're very hands-on in onboarding our clients and helping them implement these things. I mean, literally, clients move into our software platform, and the next day they're improving their hiring process and have tools, and we do it side by side with them, right? They're not just like, oh, here's a tool, good luck, figure it out, spend hours and hours, right? So I'm not a big fan of the traditional software company model, in that sense. But get your executive team on board. Use that cost of hiring guide to do some simple exercises to show them how much money they're leaving on the table or losing to not getting it right, to make a more convincing argument why they should spend a really relatively small amount of money in investing in better tools or help to solve this problem, because not solving it could literally put you out of business in some cases.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have today, guys. Appreciate all you for joining us today. Fletcher, I'll leave you with the last comments.
Well, I always appreciate you guys creating this opportunity for me to share some of my thoughts in this area. As I mentioned, I could talk all day about it. So appreciate that. I appreciate you attending and all your comments and interactions. And I look forward to hopefully connecting with more of you guys in the future.
Cool. Awesome. Have a wonderful night, guys, and we'll talk to you guys later.
All right. See ya.